Welcome to the Journey Principles, where we show you how to go from stuck to unstoppable with life strategies that work. Now, here's your host and creator of the Transform You framework, Stephen Scoggins.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Journey Principles. I'm so glad you took the time to join us. We're excited about today's topic. We promised you guys last week that we were going to do a deep dive, actually not last week, but the last podcast, we were going to do a deep dive into the G.R.O.W process, which we've gotten some information on. I know Connor, my director of connections, is itching to kind of jump into the subject. This is by far his favorite subject. So without further ado, why is G.R.O.W so important to you and why do you like it so much? I'm just curious.
I like G.R.O.W just because people always want to know, like at a high level, what do I need to do to change my life? They have a goal in mind, and that goal could be anything from, they're already in terrific shape and they want to improve it, or it could be something where it's like a radical shift in every area of their life. But you have a starting point, which is where you are today, and you have where you want to go. And people always want to know, in the simplest form possible, how do I get from where I am today to where I want to go?
Which we help them with.
Right. But the difficult part in the personal development industry, I imagine for people like you, is like everyone always wants to know the one thing that's like, how do I get there?
Or the 3 secrets too,
but
or whatever.
There's a billion things. There's so many different elements of like steps of the process in order to get from point A to point Z. It's never a straight line. So because people are always looking for that one thing, my favorite piece of content that we teach is the G.R.O.W process, because it is our best attempt at distilling all of the steps needed from you to go from point A to point Z, any point A to any point Z in your life. How do you get to your desired outcome in 4 simple steps? And we've broken down literally all the steps you need to do in these 4 steps. Now, are there other things you need to do? Of course.
Well, yeah, but it gives you. So what G.R.O.W really does is it takes the overwhelming sense of I got to do all these things all at the same time. I don't know what steps to take, all this kind of stuff. It does all of that, and it breaks it down into 4 components that are digestible and easy bite-sized. Now, in our last podcast, we basically did like an overview to kind of give you like an overview of how the G.R.O.W process works. We used an example of a young man, actually 2 young men, one using the G.R.O.W process, one not using the G.R.O.W process, and then what the different outcomes would be as part of that process.
Right.
Now, you've actually been doing G.R.O.W since I've been teaching it to you for the last couple of years. I'm very curious from your perspective. Now, we'll dig into I promise you guys, we'll go back over the acronym in just a second. But I think it's important that you guys actually hear a true-to-life story of how this process actually works. How have you actually personally applied G.R.O.W to your life, and how has it benefited your life?
So for me, I used to spend all of my time in the last stage, or at least trying to spend all my time in the last stage of the process. So again, G.R.O.W is gain perspective, recognize and remove roadblocks, organize a plan, and then work your plan.
That's right.
I'm impatient.
No,
so I
never.
want to get to the end result as quickly as possible. So I was always like, well, okay, what work do I need to do? What do I need to do? Really what I did even before then, I guess I spent a good amount of time in O as well. But I didn't do any of G and R. So
I would say that's accurate.
So basically I spent really all my time in O because I wanted to be spending all my time in W. I wanted to just be doing the work and getting there. But what I was actually doing was nothing. I was thinking all day. And
walking around in circles.
Yeah, walking around in circles, thinking about what my goal was. And being like thinking of all the ideas and all the things, overwhelming myself with all the ways that I would get there. So like if I wanted to build a multi-million-dollar business, it was so overwhelming to me to think about everything that was involved that I couldn't just sit and start building a website, because that's such an insignificant small piece
in theory.
Of that. In theory, I was like, oh my God, there's a billion things, so I need to think of everything first. So I just ended up wasting all my time thinking and staying stuck. Because I was so ready to just start doing stuff that but I didn't want to start doing stuff until I knew everything that I needed to do. So I was trying to create a plan, but I didn't have any perspective on like
what's in my way, what am I really going after?
So basically I was just paralyzed. I was trying to skip steps. The first step in the G.R.O.W process is gain perspective. And it requires you to ask a few very, very important questions.
And I got a bunch more I'm going to go over today for sure.
It requires you to ask a series of questions about where are you right now? How did you get here? What circumstances are creating your ongoing results? So if there's a result that you're not happy with that you want to change,
you're gonna have to breathe soon, man.
I'm fitting it in between. If there was a result that you want to change, you have to be able to identify what got you there. So
Well, I want to stop for just a second, because one of the things that I've actually been very encouraged in watching you apply the GROW process to your own life. I think one other thing that was kind of in your way, when we're doing it off kilter, we're doing it backwards, or we got the stuff realigned. One of the things I used to watch you do on a regular basis, you were constantly comparing yourself to people that already put in the work.
Yeah.
You wanted to, your Gary V's, all these different people that you admire and respect, and in the entrepreneurship world, in the influencer world. You said multiple times, hey, I want to build a marketing company. I want to help influencers become influential, and all that kind of stuff. And all that was fantastic, But then you would get discouraged because you're having to start with building a website.
Yeah, and it's so small, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
how do I get to here?
Yeah.
From where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So the one caveat that I've seen you start to implement in your life that I would just mention at this stage in the game is, despise not small beginnings. Despise not taking the first step. Take the first step and then the next step. And before long, you'll have traveled 1,000,000 miles and you'll be walking in your destiny, and it won't take long at all.
Right, absolutely.
Right? So the other thing is, when I look at gaining perspective, I also sometimes I'll put gaining perspective and understanding, right? Because it's perspective, and understanding is a part of gaining perspective. Because as you gain perspective, you begin to understand at a deeper level, right? What are your external needs? What are your internal needs? What are your philosophical needs? What are you really going after, and why? I got a whole list of questions that I like to use here, and I'm gonna go ahead and list them off one at a time, that we actually use when we're actually doing a deep dive or walking someone through our immersion programs or our live events and stuff like that, where we actually basically take GROW apart and show you how it actually overlays everything. And so I'm going to stick to G real fast. And first question I think everyone should ask is, where am I today?
Where am I today?
Yeah, so one of the dual things that we do is we take the 8 pillars of life, which we've done a podcast and a YouTube thing on before. There's a whiteboard lesson on it and everything. And I like to use ranges of 1 to 10. And I like to get perspective on where am I at that pillar at this point in time of my life, at any point in time of my life.
So basically, for every single area of your life, and that's what we call the pillars, basically from your financial area, your financial life, your professional life, which is your actual career, not your money, your fitness, your health, your relationships, every single area you're ranking on a scale of 1 to 10. Where am I at?
Where am I at today?
Where am I at with my health?
Okay.
Where am I at with spirituality? If I'm a Christian, have I been to church in a while?
Yeah.
I personally have not. I've been neglecting that area, and I shouldn't. So you're just giving yourself a ranking. Think of this as taking inventory of
exactly what it is
of your life, so that you can kind of see on paper in front of you, oh, here are my areas that need some work.
Exactly.
And here's where I'm good.
Well, and it also takes judgment and condemnation out of the picture, because now you're looking at raw data. You're looking at logic, right? You're looking at impediments and stuff like that. The other thing that you're going to do when you do that first question is, where am I at today, is you also want to go, well, how did I get here, right? When I was using money like it wasn't a tool and using it more like it was just something I wanted to waste, right? I got to that perspective. I got to that belief system. I got to that way of conducting my daily habits, right? A specific way, right? So if you ask, where am I at today? And you ask the next question, how did I get here? Then a lot of times you can start to see some of those roadblocks start to kind of fester up, and you can start to kind of seeing that stuff, right? So you're gaining perspective and understanding. The next one that I would say is, where do I want to go? Right? So you can take the same, I do it this way. So I'll take the first one, where am I at today? And then off to the side, I'll do another scale of 1 to 10. And I'll say, where do I want to be in the next 12 months?
And then you're comparing the two.
And then I'm going to compare the two. And the reason I'm comparing the two is because there's going to be a disparity in most cases on 2 or 3 specific pillars. Okay? And because of that, now we have a focus. All right? So when we're talking about gaining perspective, you can use the tools and resources that we can give you here. JourneyPrinciples.com resources. /resources. Connor's going to slap me if I don't put the slash in there. So, in all seriousness, no, seriously, you can take that information, and now you know what you're gaining perspective about. So I like to start with the things I'm not as strong in first, and then I like to work towards the things I'm really strong in. Okay. So where am I at today? How did I get here? Where do I want to go? So those are 3 pillar questions.
Those are the biggest ones.
Those are the biggest questions you need to answer, okay? Now, you can start to really do a deeper dive. Who was involved in how I got here, right? What kind of influences, what kind of beliefs, what kind of training, what kind of school? there's different ways to understand what made you. And one of my favorite pieces of the content is actually the origin story, which we'll get into in a future podcast.
Yeah, that's actually the next one.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Awesome. That's my favorite one. All right, cool. I love the origin story. I won't go off on deep dive. I'll just stick to my notes here because I love to teach that lesson. So, but any stretch of the means, you want to make sure that when you're looking at gaining perspective, you're moved from, okay, I know where I am, I know where I want to go, I know how I got here. Now I need to talk about the parts and pieces that kind of go into that. So who was involved in how I got here? Upon what am I basing where I want to go and why I want to go there, right? You need to understand your motives behind what it is you want and why you want it, okay? Who can I trust to give me reliable results and accountability and mentorship and guides, right? You want to know who can help you get to where you want to go. Who can teach me what I need to know to move forward, right? So in some cases, you got a mentor that kind of pushes you and holds you accountable. And other times, you got a coaches that are there just to say, do one more rep, right? They're kind of in your ear. You've also got what we refer to in our curriculum and content is called co-stars. These are people who are on similar journeys that you are and who can hold you accountable because you guys are on the same journey. So you guys will see if you're slipping a little bit, okay? And then the other thing, I think the most important thing, I think one of the ones that you've been most excited about historically, the ones that meant the most to you was what I refer to as the questions of discernment. Now, the questions of discernment originally came from a guy by the name of Tom Patterson, but I learned them from a good friend of mine, Chris G.R.O.W, a long time ago. And there are 4 important questions that in the gaining perspective phase are vital to understanding yourself at a deeper level and why you want stuff and what's at stake. And here they are. You want to actually take the time to list out what's going right in your life. A lot of times what I'll do, for those of you guys watching on YouTube, you'll see this. I'll draw a quadrant and just draw a box on the paper. Okay, so for you guys, you can see that on the thing. And then I'll put right.
He separated his piece of paper into 4 areas for those of you who can't listen.
Missing and confusing. Okay?
Or can't see.
Yeah. So good point. So I'm going to show this to the camera. So I'll draw a piece of paper. I'll basically draw a giant T, breaking it up into 4 quadrants. In the top right corner, I'm going to write what's right. Okay. Those are the things that I want to be thankful for, things that are actually working right now.
It's in the upper left of your paper.
Is it? Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Left to those looking at the paper my way.
Right.
Left if I'm looking at the camera. But yes. All right. The next one is going to be what's missing. Okay. Now, don't rush these 4 questions.
Okay.
And the reason you don't rush these 4 questions is because your destiny is hidden inside of them. Okay? So the next one's going to be what's missing, right? What's missing is there a mentor missing? Is there a piece of education missing? Is there a resource missing, right? You want to kind of do that.
So is this like what is missing for me to get from where I want to be to where I want to go?
The cool thing about this process is this specific set of questions, just like the GROW process,
it's supposed to be vague.
It's designed to be vague because it's designed to overlay any area of your life at any given time in your life.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
You just want to do your best just off of these questions as they are right now to answer them.
Exactly. And it's coming from your perspective. I advise going to a place that's quiet, that you can get a pen and a paper and just kind of be there with your own thoughts, right? Don't do it in a busy shopping mall or while you're at work or something like that because it's not going to get the best results, okay? The next one is going to be what's confusing, right? Most of the time, I see a lot of people, they're not taking action or getting traction because they're confused about something, and rather than searching out the information they need to make that problem go away, they just let it spin in their heads. You mentioned that for a number of years, that you were just so focused on what, or how do I get there? How do I get there? How to get there?
I was just asking, like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do?
Constantly.
You kept telling me, take the first step. What's the first step? And I was like, yeah, but see, the truth is, I wasn't actually, I knew what I needed to do next. Yeah. I was focused on what I needed to do 5 steps from now.
Exactly.
Which is part of my problem.
Which also says he's a visionary, by the way.
I was didn't help back then, because basically, like, I was just so concerned with, I was like, yeah, okay, I understand that today, if I start working on this website, for example, it's going to help me have a brand for my business and all that stuff. But I'm like worried, well, I also don't have customers, so I have to figure that out. So I unloaded basically all the things that I knew I would have to solve to build a business, and I looked at them all at once, like, oh my God, I have to do all of this. And if you go back to our podcast on overwhelm, when you try to do too many things at once, you get analysis paralysis.
That's right.
So most of you who feel like you're stuck and you can't take action, I used to think I was lazy. Laziness wasn't the problem. It was just that I didn't know what to do first.
Yeah, fear. Fear set in.
Fear, exactly. Yeah. I was just so afraid.
So how do you remove fear? You use knowledge and a process.
Yeah, and you take the first step, take action in spite of fear. Some fear,
yeah.
some fear,
and
no matter how
if
much
you take
get,
one successful step,
yeah,
that will give you a level of confidence. You take another successful step, that gives you another level of confidence, and the process keeps going until our seats are traded.
I think the reason a lot of people, or at least the excuse that I told myself for why I would not just go ahead and take that first step, because it seems trivial enough. It seems like it's something that should have been like, come on, stupid head. Like,
yeah, but we've all done it, so it's not as easy as.
But that's what I was telling myself. I was like, come on, dude, why can't you just get this and take this first step? I was so terrified that I was missing something, and that it didn't matter if I took the first 10 steps correctly, because the 11th step, if I screwed it up, it was all going to be for nothing.
Yeah.
And I was so afraid of that hard work being wasted on the first 10 steps, that I didn't take any action until I had it all thought out in my head.
And by that time, how many years had gone by?
It actually never happened. I never got to the point where I felt ready. I threw
out the first interesting of the podcast.
Yeah, here's what happened instead. I just got fed up and sick and tired of staying stuck.
Yeah.
I got tired of making no progress and just being a dreamer who had all these ideas, and 3 years had gone by from the idea that I had, and I still hadn't done anything, and I was like, something needs to change. At this point, I don't care if I fail. At this point, I'm just going to take the first step and see where it gets me. And I was surprised. I shouldn't have been, but I was surprised to find.
Don't you hate when mentors are right?
Hey, yeah, I know. When I took those first few steps, I actually started to be more confident. And there's a quote that I love that goes, "As you go out on the way appears."
Yep.
That's one of my favorite quotes.
Which is also another methodology called faith.
Yes. And you would always tell me faith, and I was like, "Shut up, dude! That's such a dumb answer."
I remember this one time we were getting ready to launch something with the Journey Principles, and I drew on the board, and you were like, "Well, what if and what if that? How are we going to do this and how are we going to do that?"
And the answer is,
and I just made a giant circle and wrote the word faith or God. I can't remember which one. It was one of the two. But and you were like, and then like 3 months later, you goes, "Darn it, you were right."
Yeah, he was. Yeah. I was like,
and here's why
that doesn't make any logical sense.
The reason it doesn't make any logical sense is because you're leaving out the theory of focused momentum. Okay? With every step, you create focused momentum, right? So sometimes you just have to take the needed steps to keep moving forward, and by doing that, you get focused momentum, and all of a sudden, you're doing that not knowing the outcome directly from the start, right? And when that thing happens, you've actually developed another level in what I refer to in my terminology as faith. You now know that successful results have showed up so many times when you didn't know how they were going to show up, that all of a sudden you start to be, it's a lot easier to go, well, there's something that's going to show up. There's something that's going to show up. There's something that's going to show up kind of deal. So last question, by the way, of the questions of discernment was what's wrong?
What's wrong?
Okay. Now, here's what I see happen. This is an interesting piece. I see a lot of people, they will fill up the bucket, what's wrong? Right? Because they've been telling themselves, this is what's wrong with my life, this is what's wrong with my relationships, this is what's wrong with my financial picture, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong. Almost every single time when you're working with one of our life mastery strategists and stuff like that, when you're working with our team, whether it be myself, Michael, Connor, anybody else, one of the interesting things that you see very quickly is almost every single time what's wrong can be rebucketed into something that's missing or confusing, which alone gives you more clarity.
That's awesome. That's super powerful.
All right.
So once you answer
I was going to say, for the sake of time, we got a lot more to cover.
Yeah. So okay. So that's good enough for G.
Yeah, for sure.
G is all about gaining perspective and asking yourself the questions that you have to answer of where you are today, what got you here, where you want to go, and then I think the fourth major bucket is really what can get me there. Those are really the four things that I think, and you kind of, I like how you kind of take that fourth thing of what can get me there, and you almost sometimes seem to take it into R a little bit as a roadblock.
Well, because it's a bridge.
Overcome.
Well, all right. So we already said that each one of these pieces of the grow process, supposed to stand on one another, right? Which means there's the connection. There's at some point in time you're doing a jump from G to R. Well, that bridge, right, is going to be, because when you're gaining,
how do I get there?
Exactly. Exactly.
And then you really solidify it with the O, which is organize the plan. So let's dive into R for a second.
Yeah, I mean, so all right. So there's several things that can be potential roadblocks that maybe you're not addressing. Okay, the purpose of R is to do one thing first: recognize that they're there.
Okay.
You'd be surprised at how many times people don't know what's holding them back is actually staring them in the face. And here's what I mean by that. We'll use that example a few minutes ago. You wanted to go as far as you could, okay? Right. Well, when we started working together, you weren't consciously aware that you were consciously comparing yourself to people on a regular basis.
Right, or that I was staying stuck in my head due to my impatience and my fear and lack of faith.
Right. Now, some of those things come from identity and self-worth and all these different kinds of things. So there's lots of parts and pieces that you would dig into as part of this process. When we start to go recognize roadblocks and then remove them, this is another process that you're going to spend time intentionally looking at things in your life that are holding you back. That's all a roadblock is.
And I also like to separate that into two different areas, because a roadblock could be something that you have in your life that's holding you back, like a toxic relationship or something like that. It could be a physical thing that you have in your life, or it could be something that you need to have that you don't have. So a roadblock could be a lack of the proper information, a lack of the right situation or environment. You know, like if you
a lack of emotional intelligence.
So like if your problem that you'd like to solve is that you don't have enough money left at the end of every month. You're living paycheck to paycheck. Okay. A roadblock could be your friends who are all, being a bad influence on you, getting you to go out every Friday night and spend all your money. Or
that was me, by the way.
Or it could be a lack of the proper financial information. You don't know what you're doing. It could be a variety of things. R is where you recognize what is going to stand between where I am today and what you defined in G. This is why it's important to start with G. If you just say where I want to go, here's what I did. I just said, here's where I want to go. I'm going to do it. And I skipped everything else. I skipped all the other questions. I skipped the what's right, what's wrong, what's confusing, what's missing. To be honest, when I first heard those, I was like, those sound like corny questions.
Until you sit down with a pen and pad.
I was like, what do I need to know? Like, what's confusing? Like, who cares? I just need I have a result. I want to get there. So that's how I was looking at it.
Well, let's break it down this way, because, all right, so recognizing roadblocks, it comes in three forms: internal, external, and philosophical. External could be the person you're talking about. You got a bunch of friends wanting you to go out. You give in, you go out and blow all your money. Okay. Internal might be, I got a self-worth issue. Like I used to struggle with massive self-worth issues, not feeling valuable enough, not feeling significant.
What about lack of the right information? Is that internal or external?
Lack of the right information could be both. Right? So lack of the right information on the external side could be or it could be it's not available. Lack on the internal side is maybe you don't really want it. Like maybe you're not actually really wanting the information. In other words, I've seen people hold themselves back because they know if they go get the information, they're going to have to take a step.
Wow.
Right? And that's a methodology of self-sabotage, okay? The philosophical side actually has to do with the transition of you, right? So I've had to deal with a couple different things growing up, specifically. Self-worth. I've had to deal with all kinds of things, okay? So self-worth, low self-esteem, all of that's kind of tied together. And I had to finally be okay with becoming successful, which you wouldn't think would be a problem. You would think, okay, I've been unsuccessful, I want to be successful, and then you become successful, and then you're like, crap, I don't want people to know I'm successful, right? Which is weird.
So if you grow up in maybe a poverty area or something like that,
it's going to have its own challenges.
Limiting beliefs around being successful, and you don't want to share that with people.
Exactly. And there's a few other things. So I'm going to break this down really fast for the sake of time. Traumas. So if you went through a massive trauma, maybe abuse or something like that, and stuff like that's going to be important. Not everybody's going to have that situation, but there are far more than there used to be, unfortunately, and that needs to be looked at, okay? Triggers, avoidance, people-pleasing, self-sabotage, victim thinking, vacillating, which is indecisiveness. That's something I used to struggle with big time, which is kind of funny because you're like, you make decisions all the time kind of thing. Controlling, enabling, okay? A sense of denial, a sense of unresolved conflict. Right? These are all episodes or ideas, if you will, of things that could potentially be in your way. What's your attitude like? Are you falling prey to what we refer to as the 7 enemies of identity, which we'll be doing in a later show, right? What's standing in your way? Are there toxic relationships? Are there things like that that's actually holding you back? Those are all examples of potential roadblocks that if you don't know what to look for or why to look for it, you never look for it, and because of that, you never get to go forward because it chains you to the ground with a big ball on a chain, and you feel like you're constantly dragging things behind your feet.
Don't overlook your roadblocks, guys. It's so important. Roadblocks are extremely, extremely important that people have a good understanding of what they are and how they're holding you back.
So give me 3 examples of 3 roadblocks that you've had to face and overcome.
Ooh, okay. Well, I know the first one. First one that comes to my mind is this recent hurdle of the overwhelm thing.
Okay.
Because my biggest impediment for so long was just this I thought I had a problem with just overthinking, and I did, but that was actually just a symptom. I thought that it was just the way that I was, or that like I was wired for it. I literally told myself all these things.
My grandfather would say, dig deeper.
Yeah, I literally believed that, oh man, I need to beat this. I guess it's just the way that I am, that I overthink things. And I wasn't able to be as effective as I wanted to be, and it was causing all kind of issues. I was really, really upset and almost depressed with myself because I was like, I can't do what I need to do to get the result that I want. What is wrong with me? There was nothing wrong with me. What the truth was that basically I had heard for years that you need to get all of your tasks, all of your objectives, all of your priorities out of your head onto paper, and then once you have a big to-do list...
Sorry, I'm smiling off camera.
You're supposed to organize your to-dos and budget them into different, levels of urgency and all this. Basically getting everything out of your head, creating an actual to-do list so that you're not overwhelmed. I fought so hard on that for so long because when I grew up in school, I always got away with not doing that. So I never had to do my due diligence early on in school to get a result I wanted. I just kind of went after it, and I usually got an okay result until life started getting harder. And then
until life became life.
Yeah, and
because high school life is very different than real life.
The biggest roadblock that I recently overcame was realizing that when I take a breath, I sit back and I actually take the time, which is, it sucks for me. It's not fun for me. I don't enjoy getting things out of my head. I enjoy the end result, but I just want to be doing stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I took the time to do this, and I found I was way more free in my mind. And my motivation...
You were twice as productive.
I was at least twice as productive, and my motivation increased. I thought I had a laziness problem. I was like, oh, wait, I didn't have a laziness problem. I had an overwhelm problem.
Yeah.
So I'd say that the roadblock was a combination of stubbornness.
Yeah.
Because I just was like, I don't need to get everything out of my head. And if you don't change what you're doing, it's the definition of insanity.
Yep.
Okay, you can't keep doing what you've always done and expect different results. It's not going to happen. So eventually I just swallowed my pride and looked at myself in the mirror and said, dude, you got to change something. Why don't you finally get everything out of your head?
I'm glad you're mentioning that particular one, because I bet you 80% of our audience is struggling with that one particular roadblock right now.
Feeling overwhelmed?
And how they got there, right? So take a moment and replay this podcast over and over again, because that's an important piece of information that can help you actually in your gaining perspective phase as you're setting up, recognizing your roadblocks. What are two other ones you got?
That's harder, because that was the only that one was so monumental that I'm not even really thinking about any other big things. So what comes to my mind in terms of roadblocks, I don't even know. That's really the biggest thing. I can't personally think of any other recent ones.
So another one is what we refer to as doing the push-ups.
Oh, okay. So that was further back. That was more of like a 6 to 9 months ago thing. But so
that's what I'm saying. We're using the concept.
So earlier this podcast, I talked about how I used to basically spin my wheels all day. I would have a million things that I knew that I wanted to do in order to build this business or improve my fitness or whatever. But I struggled to take the first step because I was so overwhelmed by all these things. So before I fixed my overwhelm problem, which was more recent, that was about like 2-3 weeks ago. Before that, though, I struggled for a long time with just the symptom of that, which was not taking action. So before I figured out that it was my overwhelm, I was at a point where, I'm getting older now. It's not cute anymore that I'm not able to be productive. It's life demands results. You have to be able to show up every day and consistently put in the work in order to get a result if you want to live and if you want to eat and eat all that.
Yeah, so, if you want to do anything.
So I got to this point in my life and basically realized, okay, well, I don't know why I feel so overwhelmed all the time. I don't know why I don't feel the motivation to do what I need to do, but I have to just do it.
Yeah.
So the first hurdle that I really overcame was basically, in spite of not feeling like it, I started just doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And I noticed that immediately when I started doing it anyway, all that motivation that I thought that I wanted, that I needed in order to start, actually came as a result of me taking action. And then I did some research, which I talked about a couple podcasts ago, which was, or it might have been the last one, no, it was a couple ago, basically,
how do you keep that all organized?
I don't, clearly.
We're putting out so much content, I gave up trying to keep it organized.
A few podcasts ago, we talked about dopamine hits and how the way that the brain works with motivation.
Yep.
It's getting off on a little tangent, but basically the way that the brain works with motivation is everyone always wants to feel like it before they start taking action.
That's right. It doesn't work that way.
That's not scientifically how it works.
Yeah.
So
it's not how it works in the gym either.
Dopamine is the neurotransmitter in your brain associated with the feelings of reward, motivation, all that kind of stuff. So in order for you to feel that motivation, you have to have dopamine present in your brain. Okay? And that's, I'm sure that there's a scientist out there that's like, not technically, but that's basically how it works. So you have to have this dopamine present, but dopamine is also a reward chemical. Dopamine only gets released when you're anticipating a reward, or when you've just done something and you feel really, really great.
Yeah, you got the reward,
So you can't actually anticipate a reward unless you know that you're taking steps to get there.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you've just been sitting on the couch for months and months and months, you might see a video of a dude with a six-pack and be like, oh, I feel motivated. What you're actually feeling is not motivation, by the way. That's inspiration. It's different. You're inspired. You feel good, and you're like,
that's a whole separate podcast.
But then you wonder, well, why am I not actually like having the drive to get up in the morning and go to the gym?
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to feel it that way, because for the last several months, you've just been sitting on the couch eating Lay's potato chips.
Yep.
If you want to change that, you're going to have to trick your brain into releasing some of that dopamine.
Which is what our process does.
And then you will feel motivated. So the secret that I learned was, if instead of waiting for the motivation to appear in your brain of, today I feel like going to the gym, which is not going to happen. If you haven't been going to the gym, you're not going to all of a sudden feel like it. Very, very rarely.
Unless you get, like our buddy Casey Krejci says, nutrified.
Yeah, if you get nutrified, it can't happen, but that's a whole different story. But but basically, you're not going to just, you can't keep waiting to feel like doing it.
Yeah.
But if you get yourself to say, you know what, all right, 7 a.m., I said I'd go to the gym, I'm going to the gym no matter what.
And you do the
it that
push-ups.
first day, and you do the push-ups, which is what this whole conversation is about.
Push-ups for us, all that means is take action.
Yeah, taking action.
You can't build a bigger chest without doing the push-ups. We talked about that a couple times in a podcast before. One more that I think that I'd like you to just hit on for 3 minutes.
Right.
Is one of your favorites that you've even told me was how important it is to surround yourself with great people.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so this is actually a really, really big one.
That's why I said you got 3 minutes.
A lot of people I could do it in way less than that. A lot of people underestimate the impact that the influences around them and the top 5 to 6 people who you're surrounding yourself with on a day-to-day basis are impacting your future. Okay? If you're hanging out with deadbeats, you're very likely to become a deadbeat, unfortunately. No matter how amazing you are, it's just very, very likely. If you're hanging out with super successful people and you are not super successful, you will be surprised at how quickly you either get kicked out of that group or you become successful because of your influence around you. I don't know what it is. I assume it's something to do with, like, when we were cavemen, it was absolutely critical that basically we're liked by the tribe, right? So I assume that biologically it's important to surround yourself with people who are doing the right things. I don't know. That's kind of my guess, is that it has something to do with that. But
well, we were built as people to be community animals. Okay, so meaning, so I'm a person of faith. So I've done my research, and I've done a lot of research on nature, nurture, creation versus evolution, all so on and so forth. But it doesn't, even no matter which side of the fence you're on that topic, for example, it does not matter. We are community beings. We like to be in community. It's also why during the taping of this, where the entire country, actually the entire world, is facing the C-19 virus, coronavirus, COVID, right? And people are having a really hard time being in isolation, either by themselves or just with their family, because we are relational beings. Now, to piggyback off of what you're saying, there's an old saying that says, "Show me your 5 friends, and I'll show you your future." Right? Yes. When I first met you as a young man, you were incredibly talented, incredibly gifted, but you were like a sniper rifle that, like, somebody with shaky arms was like trying to aim.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No aim, just
no aim.
I knew where I wanted to go. I knew the target.
Somewhere generally over there, kind of thing.
But I was just all over the place, right?
And when I first met you, a lot of people you were hanging out with at the time weren't trying to go there at all. They had zero interest in going that direction. If anything, they were trying to kind of stay status quo, And I think that it's important to realize that, those are 3 major roadblocks that may be standing in your way, right? I hit a bunch of other ones like summary level kind of
deal. So my biggest 3 that we just went over are obviously minding your influences and the top 5 people you're spending time with. Also, doing the push-ups, which is just taking action. You're not going to feel like it, guys. Just take action anyway. And the third one is if you feel overwhelmed or if you feel that this is why a lot of you aren't taking action. It's why I wasn't. I just didn't realize it until earlier. You have to actually go through the steps to get all of your goals, all of everything on paper. Because if you don't do that, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're not going to feel like taking action at all.
Yeah.
By the way, also a quick shortcut to the push-ups thing. Taking action. When I did solve the overwhelm problem, I actually did get a little boost of dopamine. I guess because that technically is a step.
Yeah.
Getting clear is a step. So
yes.
If you don't, so basically, I guess if you are sitting on the couch eating Lay's potato chips and you want to fix that, but you're not really wanting to go to an actual gym yet, maybe take 30 minutes and create a diet plan or create something.
Eat one less bag of chips.
Exactly. Yeah. Or
seriously, I mean, sometimes the first step is just doing one less or one more thing that maybe it's holding you back. Now, so we hit the roadblock pretty hard. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways a roadblock can come. If you haven't taken a chance to actually discover what those roadblocks are and you're really kind of unsure what to do, feel free to plug into us. We will be happy to take you through an actual process that actually helps you uncover and recognize your roadblocks so we can then remove those jokers, okay? Step 3 in our process of the growth process when we're talking about the deep dive is organize a plan. Okay. Organizing a plan sometimes is scary, but it doesn't have to be like overly complicated or overly set in stone. Organizing a plan almost always has to have a level of flexibility and several other attributes, okay? Some of the things that I like to have as being part of my plan is I like to have a defined, focused outcome on what I'm trying to achieve. And I would hit that from every single pillar, okay? Maybe you're focused on your relational pillar right now, which is great, right? But clearly articulate where it is you want to go and why, okay? Take another look at your roadblocks and make sure that you've got a mechanism in place, whether it be a person, a place, a thing, a widget, or whatever that can help backfill for that particular roadblock, okay? So take the time to look at them one more time and figure out, okay, how am I going to go over it, under it, through it, around it, whatever, but you want to make sure you do that, all right? Make sure that your plan encompasses and utilizes all your gifts, your talents, and your skill set. Far too many times I see people do the front end work, right? And then they try to force fit themselves into a mold. Connor is going to be a highly successful entrepreneur, and it's my goal to help him make that happen and make that dream a reality. It's something he's called to, right? Connor's also an amazing artist. The dude can sing and play piano like nobody's business.
I don't know about saying so much, but...
Whatever. He had an entire room singing with him, whatever. He can say that all he wants to. I'm telling you, he's gifted in that area. The one thing Connor is not great with is the same thing that I typically struggle with. Now, he's better at it than I am, which is a certain level of details. If I put Connor in a spreadsheet or an editing document, you just saw his face. Yeah, he just put his hands over his eyes for you guys on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I say all that to say that you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, and the only way you do that is you set yourself up for success by utilizing the stuff that you're good at, right? Part of a roadblock is uncovering what the blind spot is and backfilling for it, okay? So if we're going to backfill our roadblocks, we also need to be able to leverage our strengths, okay? The next thing is identifying your mentors, your guides, and what we refer to again as a co-star. And a co-star is someone who is on your team, meaning they're on the same journey you are, they're heading the same direction, and you guys will bounce ideas off each other and even accountability and, okay, hey man, can you hold me accountable? I can hold you accountable, back and forth.
So you're going back to your roadblocks
exactly
when creating your plan and basically going back to the G and the R in order to identify elements of things you're going to have to put in there.
Exactly.
Got it.
The final step actually there's 2 more steps. The next step in making sure you're organizing a quality plan, and this is something that I totally missed. It's totally a blind spot for me with my first roadblock, okay? And a buddy of mine actually showed me about this. I didn't actually have what I refer to and what we refer to as a replenishment or a rejuvenative plan, okay? What I mean by that is changing your life is not always easy. It's always worth it, but it's not always easy. When you think about that, when you've been working at it, you're doing the push-ups, at a certain point in time, you've been doing the push-ups so long as your chest is burning, right? So by definition, you're going to need to take a break from doing the push-ups, okay? Now, there's a process in place as part of the growth framework and the growth process that we do that makes that a reality. I had to consider what I needed to do, why I needed to do it, and where I needed to go to do it as part of a replenishment plan. Far too many people are working so hard at doing it over and over again that they begin to lose the effectiveness that they once had and the initiative, if you will, that they once had simply because they're tired.
So you have to build into your plan time for replenishment and time so that you don't get burnt out.
Exactly. And here are the things you need to do, build into your replenishment plan. So inside of your organize a plan, there's a part of it that's built that's just called replenishment, okay? There are 3 things you need to make sure you got under control there. Where do I go? What do I do? And who am I doing it with? Okay? Where do I go? For me, for example, I love going to the mountains. Like I can stare at a mountain and write books all day long. I come back to Raleigh for some reason and I have a hard time getting back to my book to finish my book, even though my publisher's on my high knee about my deadline. I'm sorry, guys. Oopsie. All right. That being said, I'll go to the mountains. I like to actually be with a pen, a pad, or a computer when I can reflect and think and all that kind of stuff. So I'm at the mountains taking an action of basically reflection, if you will, pen, pad, paper. And the third thing is, depending on what the replenishment program is looking like, I'll either be by myself, which I actually enjoy from time to time, or I'll be beside my beautiful wife. Okay? That's an element of creating a replenishment plan, which is part of your organizing a plan. Okay? Now, the final thing is your measurement. How are you going to measure your success long term? Now, when you set up your measurement metrics, if you will, what you don't want to do is if you miss the mark, you don't want to basically discount yourself and all of a sudden think you're a failure and all that kind of stuff. No, you just take a note. Okay, I missed the mark this time. Let me start over. Let me do it again. And then you just keep building off of that. Okay, so hit those things, the highlights one more time. When you go to organize a plan, define a clear objective. Recognize and remove roadblocks, meaning you go back to your roadblock sheet and create a methodology to get around it, over it, through it. Maximize your talents. Identify and implement your guides and co-stars, and what we refer to as mentors. And then make sure you've got a replenishment plan in place to build yourself along while you're tired. And then finally, make sure you've got a way to measure success.
That's perfect. Wow, there was a lot of value packed into that.
The organizing a plan is the one that I've never done a great job of taking the time to actually explain how I build a plan.
Right.
And one of the people that reached out to us on our social media channel said, well, I get organizing a plan, but how do you do that? So I figured it was in our best interest to actually explain how we can organize a plan. So
I love it.
And the final one, as you can kind of imagine,
step
is work the plan. It's doing the push-ups. It's taking the time to take what you fear most and actually make your dreams bigger than your fears, right? Because if you have a strong enough why, which is another reason we do the grain perspective, if you have enough strong enough reasons, then every time it gets hard, you'll push through, right? One of the things I love about Rocky Balboa and Sylvester Stallone entirely, one of my most favorite things about that guy is all of his movies has one thing. Rocky always gets back up.
Yeah.
Right? And some of these things have try to take him out completely and fully, right? But at the end of the day, Rocky always gets back up. And we want to help you do the same thing because you're amazing, you're worth it, and we want to help you win at your life.
That's it, man. I don't think we could have done a better deep dive on G.R.O.W.
I know it was your favorite, so.
It is. I think that anybody who has been listening to a billion podcasts like I have and is looking for the one thing, I think that if you just start here, start on G.R.O.W. Don't skip steps, please. Please don't, because I did that and it's the other secret, the bonus secret we'll give you today for today's podcast is trust the process. Yes.
Just trust the process.
If I had trusted the process, I would have been where I am today 4 years ago.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. All right, buddy. You want to close this out today?
I think we're good to go. I mean, guys, if you want to see us next time, next podcast is next Tuesday. It's going to be podcast episode 7. We're going to talk about how your origin story,
my favorite,
can hold you back in life if you let it. I like how our favorites are
back to back.
Yeah, exactly. So everything from overcoming your past and how to leverage, maybe you don't have such a great past, how to turn that into a positive future.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about next time, guys.
That's cool.
Take care.
Yeah, that's right. If you got questions, I want to stop real fast. If you got questions at journeyprinciples.com. If you want any of our free resources, that's journeyprinciples.com/replenishment. resources with lots of great free resources for you there to help you on your journey. They're totally free, no obligation whatsoever. We're here to help you. And say it again.
Guys, take care. This has been the Journey Principles Podcast with Steven Scoggins and Connor Kraft. We'll see you next time, guys.
All right, take care, guys. Peace.
I'll see you in the next video. And please, if you don't mind and you enjoyed the life mastery content we're building, consider hitting the subscribe button and also hitting the bell so you'll be the first to get notified anytime we release new content.